Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're plunging into the often murky and always fascinating world of Catherine de' Medici. She is a figure frequently painted as this ruthless villain, yet also, a remarkable survivor and an astute political mind.
Absolutely. Quite the contradiction.
And our deep dive today pulls from a really rich mix of sources. We've got everything from lively online discussions on Reddit to a psychological analysis,
Right.
detailed historical accounts from Wikipedia, and even a scholarly journal article that, well, tries to knit all these perspectives together.
Yeah, and our mission here is really to unpeel these layers of conflicting narratives.
Okay.
We want to explore why some branded her a ruthless and cruel queen, while, others hailed her as a great creative artist in festivals.
Big difference there.
Huge. Our goal is to move beyond that caricature, the sort of serpent queen image, and really try to understand the complex individual, the frankly impossible world she inhabited, and what made her such a figure of enduring debate.
Okay, so let's start with something surprisingly contentious. Catherine's appearance.
Right.
Our Reddit sources, they highlight this striking contrast. Some modern viewers look at portraits and find her absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, I've seen those comments.
But then contemporary accounts call her ugly, saying her mouth too large and her eyes too prominent and colorless for beauty. How do we even begin to reconcile those? They're just wildly different perceptions.
Well, that's precisely the puzzle, isn't it? It really forces us to confront how much beauty is truly objective versus, well, a reflection of prevailing standards.
Right.
And crucially, political opinion. For figures like Catherine, their appearance often became sort of a political canvas. Initial portrayals might have been genuinely flattering. Artists did that. But once she became controversial, her perceived ugliness became just another weapon for her detractors, twisting physical traits into, moral failings.
So her looks became part of the political attack.
Exactly. It shows how even something so personal becomes a public battleground for those in power. And, even Diane de Poitiers,
Her husband's famous mistress.
yeah, the renowned femme fatale. In portraits, to our modern eye, she looks, well, fine. Pretty ordinary, maybe.
Yeah.
It just reminds us that historical beauty standards are really a product of their time and context. Very different from ours.
Okay, moving on from appearance, it's clear her early life was just set up for heartbreak.
Absolutely. Born into the powerful Medici banking family in Florence, 1519, she was orphaned young, raised in convents. Then her uncle, Pope Clement VII, explicitly used her as a marriage pawn. Purely political.
Right, which immediately sets the stage for her marriage. It was far less about, personal connection
Oh, completely.
and everything about diplomacy.
Yeah.
At just 14, she's sent to France to marry Henri, Duke of Orleans.
Princess II's son.
Exactly, bringing this substantial dowry, promised French lands, all to seal an alliance.
But here's the critical twist, right? Clement VII dies soon after the wedding. And the dowry. Never fully paid. King Francis, I famously said, "The girl has been given to me stark naked."
Oof. That must have put her in a terrible spot.
Instantly. An incredibly precarious position. She's a foreign woman, not even royal blood in their eyes, and now seemingly has nothing to offer.
And then there was Henri himself. Our sources say he was smitten with Diane de Poitiers,
Right.
who was, 19 years older?
19 years his senior, yes. And he was completely uninterested in Catherine, even in the bedroom.
Right. And what's even more striking is that Diane herself, the mistress,
Yeah.
reportedly tried to encourage him to produce an heir with Catherine.
Yeah.
What does that tell you about the pressures on these women?
Oh, it speaks volumes about the sheer emotional devastation Catherine must have felt, alongside just these immense dynastic pressures. I mean, picture it. A pious young lady taught that marriage is about being faithful till death do you part,
Yeah.
arriving probably with dreams of some kind of loving union, only to find her husband deeply involved with a woman who had, well, basically raised him.
It's uncomfortable.
Very. And as you said, even that rival was pushing for her to conceive. Then after 10 years, no pregnancy. Doctors eventually diagnosed Henri with hypospadias,
Which is...
basically a birth defect affecting the urethra. It would have significantly hampered his ability to father children.
So it wasn't necessarily her fault.
Probably not, but imagine the speculation and blame she endured for a decade. That revelation must have just shattered her worldview.
Yeah.
And been one of her first hard lessons that, noblemen could be, well, pretty callous.
Animals was the word used in one source.
Right. But despite all this public humiliation, this betrayal, she stayed steadfastly loyal to the king and always seemed to put France's needs above her own feelings.
Okay, let's turn now to Catherine's remarkable shift into power. Because for women in 16th century France, society was, deeply patriarchal.
No, absolutely. It largely confined them to the private sphere, wives, mothers. That was the expectation.
Yet Catherine, against all those odds, she fought fiercely to gain significant political power. How did she even manage that?
Well, this brings us directly to Salic law. This was a foundational French cultural rule that severely limited women's power. Specifically, it prevented them from inheriting the throne. And it even made this strict distinction between mothers being guardians, the tutelle for minor kings, which was allowed, and holding the real administrative power, the curatelle, that was always reserved for male relatives.
So there was this built-in barrier.
A huge one. This rigid framework meant any woman seeking real political influence, like Catherine, was inherently seen as, transgressing the natural order. It created this deep-seated societal fear of women in authority.
So then Henri II dies unexpectedly in that jousting accident.
Yes, a huge shock.
And Catherine is suddenly thrust into this central, but as you say, incredibly precarious political role.
She becomes queen mother and then queen regent for 3 of her sons in succession, Francis II, Charles IX, and Henri III.
And her ambition. In this new context, it became undeniably clear, didn't it?
Oh, yes. Despite her profound grief after Francis II's early death, he was her firstborn son to rule. She acted promptly and fiercely to attain political dominance.
How did she assert that?
Well, she famously claimed that the King of Navarre, who had a claim to power, completely put himself in my hands and stripped himself of power and authority under my good pleasure.
Wow, that's bold.
Very bold. A clear assertion of her authority, and she explicitly stated her determination, saying she would prefer them to take away my life along with my honor rather than make me beg.
So no begging for power.
Absolutely not. She genuinely believed she was, quote, qualified for full regency through her political experience and her duty to her children. She wasn't just going to step aside.
Okay, so this political ascent, this ambition, it leads us directly to why she became known as the Serpent Queen.
That infamous nickname.
Our sources repeatedly show she was villainized, not just for her ambition, which was bad enough for a woman then, but specifically because she was a woman challenging those gender norms, and crucially, because of her Italian ancestry.
Yes, there's this deep vein of xenophobia at play here. It's quite potent.
How so?
Well, the French, while ironically imitating Italian art and culture at the time.
Right, the Renaissance influence.
Exactly. They often simultaneously despised them as money-grubbing opportunists who would slip a knife between a man's shoulder blades. That was the stereotype.
Okay, a pretty nasty one.
Very. And Catherine, being seen as a rich girl rather than a royal one, was disparaged as a shopkeeper's daughter. This Italian stereotype, combined with the prevailing stereotype of women as weak, maybe cunning, prone to duplicity, it directly linked her to poison.
Ah, the poison connection.
Yes. There was even this popular rumor that she introduced poison to France. Utter nonsense, of course, but it stuck.
So she was accused of actual poisonings.
Countless poisonings, including Henry's older brother, the Dauphin Francis, years earlier, and later the Queen of Navarre. And get this. The Chateau de Blois even has a room with 327 little drawers, supposedly filled with poisons she concocted herself. Pure legend, but it shows the reputation she gained.
Wow. Okay, so beyond poison, she was also accused of being this master manipulator, right?
Yeah.
Particularly with her court, maybe even her own children.
Yes, definitely. That whole story of the flying squadron.
What was that?
The rumor was that she used her ladies-in-waiting to seduce powerful men at court for political information or influence.
Any truth to it?
Most historians think it's largely exaggerated, likely part of the smear campaign. Evidence suggests she actually cared for her ladies, but the rumor persisted. It fed into that image of her as manipulative.
And what about with her children?
Well, this reveals a really fascinating paradox in her motherhood. Her own daughter, Marguerite de Valois-Margot, described her as devoted, yet also incredibly manipulative.
How so?
Margot said, "If her mother chanced to turn her eyes towards me, I trembled for fear that I had done something to displease her."
Intense.
And she also claimed, "I had no will but her own." So you see this mix of love and control, and the political maneuvering involving her children, which was seen as somehow unmotherly by critics, and even her son Charles IX's later decree that he reserved the power to command his mother, All of that further fueled this perception of her as cunning and ruthless. It reinforced the idea that a woman's political influence, especially over her sons, was inherently sinister.
And then there's that label, Machiavellian. We use it today to mean cunning, ruthless.
Right, almost amoral political maneuvering.
But it's ironic, isn't it? Because our sources point out that Machiavelli himself and his book, The Prince,
Yeah.
they were actually quite revered in France before the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre.
That's fascinating. So the meaning shifted.
It seems so. It was only after 1576 that Machiavelli's reputation and Catherine's along with it declined together, which is extra ironic given that the prince was dedicated to her own father, Lorenzo de' Medici.
Wow. Talk about guilt by association and historical irony.
Okay, we have to talk about the St. Bartholomew's Day massacre. It's arguably the most infamous event linked to Catherine.
Absolutely. Impossible to discuss her without it.
Our sources frame it as this catastrophic turning point. And strangely, it seems rooted in an attempt at peace
Exactly.
that just tragically spiraled into horrific violence.
Yes, it really brings us to the culmination, or perhaps the lowest point, of the French Wars of Religion. And Catherine's core belief, despite being a devout Catholic herself, was apparently that violence only serves to increase and multiply Protestantism. She wasn't seen as a religious fanatic.
It goes about her sons.
Right. One source says she was no fanatic except when her sons and their birthright was concerned. Her primary goal seemed to be stability for the throne.
So she tried to secure peace. How?
By arranging the marriage of her daughter, Marguerite, who was Catholic, to the Protestant leader, Henri of Navarre.
Which was highly controversial, I imagine.
Hugely controversial. It angered staunch Catholics, it angered the Pope, but Catherine pushed it through, hoping it would broker peace.
So the wedding happens on August 18, 1572. Lots of Huguenots, the French Protestants, come to mostly Catholic Paris for it.
Yes. A tense atmosphere already.
Then just 4 days later, Admiral Gaspard de Coligny, a really prominent Huguenot leader.
A key figure.
He shot in an assassination attempt. He survives, initially, but this act was the immediate trigger, wasn't it?
It was the sparks that lit the powder keg. And here's where the interpretations of who was responsible for the massacre that followed get really crucial and contested.
Okay, what are the theories?
Well, traditionally, Catherine and her Catholic advisors were seen as the main culprits. The story went that they panicked after the failed assassination attempt and basically forced the hand of a hesitant King Charles IX to order the killing of the Huguenot leaders.
Right, that's the classic version.
But some modern historians argue against this simple narrative. Mac P. Holt, for instance, points to a powerful faction including Henry, Duke of Anjou.
The king's younger brother.
Yeah.
Later Henri III.
Exactly. Along with other hardline Catholics and Italian advisors, Thierry Van even suggests Anjou himself was perhaps the most responsible, seeing it as a ruthless opportunity to eliminate rivals and gain power for himself. So the blame isn't necessarily solely on Catherine.
Okay, so the massacre itself begins on the night of August 23rd, 24th. It starts by targeting the Protestant leaders.
Yes, who were trapped in Paris for the wedding festivities.
But then it just spirals into popular mob violence across Paris for 3 days.
Brutal street violence.
Yeah.
And it didn't stop there. It eventually spread to 12 other cities across France.
Good heavens, the death toll estimates are just staggering.
Yeah.
They range widely from 5,000 up to maybe 30,000 across France.
A horrific number. And the reactions internationally were just as starkly divided.
How so?
Pope Gregory III initially celebrated it. He even struck a medal commemorating the event, though later apparently had some misgivings.
Really? He celebrated it?
Initially, yes. Philip II of Spain reportedly laughed when he heard the news. He saw it as a victory for Catholicism.
Wow, but not everyone approved.
No, definitely not. The Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian II called it a shameful bloodbath. Protestant countries were obviously horrified.
And this event, more than anything else perhaps, cemented Catherine's villainous reputation, didn't it?
It absolutely did. It became the cornerstone of the Black legend of Catherine de' Medici, though it's still heavily debated whether she truly intended this widespread slaughter, or if the original plan was perhaps a more limited, judicious assassination of certain key Protestants, which then got completely out of control due to factional rivalries and popular fury. We may never know for sure exactly what her level of intent was.
So Catherine de' Medici eventually died on January 5th, 1589. She was 69. After this lifetime of fighting for her family, for France.
A long and tumultuous life.
And her lifelong fascination with astrology seems to have played a role, weirdly, even in her final days.
It really did. Her superstitions are quite poignant in her final moments, her personal astrologer, cum Ruggieri,
Okay.
he had predicted she would die near Saint-Germain. And remember, Nostradamus had also apparently predicted Henri II's death and that she would outlive 3 of her children, which she did.
So she believed these predictions.
Deeply, it seems. Believing the Saint-Germain prediction, she even deliberately avoided Paris near the end, retiring to the Château de Blois, specifically to get away from the Church of Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois in Paris.
Trying to cheat fate.
Exactly. But the irony is, while she was dying at Blois, she was administered the last rites by a young, unknown priest.
Yes.
Whose name happened to be Julien de Saint-Germain.
No way!
Yes. So in this twisted, almost poetic way, the prophecy came true despite her best efforts to evade it.
That's quite something. But what's particularly striking, reading the sources, is the ultimate lack of sympathy she received at her death.
No, not much warmth there. A historian stated her passing was treated with as much grief as that of a goat.
A goat? Wow.
And a contemporary noted she was loved by nobody, or if she is, it is only from fear. Harsh words.
Very harsh. So, this really sums up her incredibly complex legacy, doesn't it?
It does. On one hand, you have some psychotherapists suggesting her capacity for, well, ruthless actions, maybe narcissism, might be linked to that orphan childhood, that emotionally sterile marriage we talked about, trauma shaping her actions.
Okay, a psychological angle.
But then you have revisionist historians who've tried to rehabilitate her. They celebrate her accomplishments, her resilience.
Seeing her as
a strong woman navigating an almost impossible political position in a man's world.
But not everyone agrees with that revisionist take.
No. Others still critique her quite harshly, arguing she actually endangered the monarchy through poor parenting, maybe manipulating her sons too much, and having a love for excitement and intrigue that led to instability.
It seems she herself had a different goal in mind.
Yes, she herself aimed, in her own words, to govern myself in such a way that God and the world will have occasion to be content with me.
Contentment. Doesn't sound like she found it.
No. In the end, she died, as one source put it, misjudged and lonely. And there's a final indignity.
That's out.
Her body was improperly embalmed and apparently left in an unmarked grave for 21 years before being moved. Seriously. After everything she did for France.
Yes, a very stark contrast to her lifelong dedication to the French crown and her own stated desire for contentment and recognition. #outro.
So what does this all mean? Where does this leave us? Our deep dive into Catherine de' Medici has shown us, I think, a figure far more complex than those simple labels, Black Queen, or, less common White Queen.
Definitely not simple.
She was clearly pragmatic, ambitious, operating within this deeply patriarchal, incredibly tumultuous era.
Constantly battling that xenophobia, the misogyny.
Right, all to secure her family's power and maybe bring some kind of stability to a kingdom just torn apart by religious strife.
So what stands out to you, thinking about all this? Her story, for me, is such a powerful reminder of how historical narratives get shaped.
How so?
By bias, by who holds power, by perception. It really prompts us, I think, to consider the immense pressures and expectations placed upon leaders.
Especially women leaders.
Particularly in times of crisis, and how their actions, however brutal they might appear to us today, might have been seen or even felt as absolutely necessary for survival within their own historical context.
Yeah.
It challenges our judgment.
It really does. Okay, so perhaps the most provocative thought for you, our listener, to mull over is this. How do we reconcile this figure who, on one hand, orchestrated these magnificent court festivals, almost like works of art?
Yeah, she was a great patron of the arts.
And championed a kind of religious pragmatism, trying to find peace, with the same figure accused of widespread poisonings and, well, at least being deeply implicated in engineering a horrific massacre.
It's a stark contrast.
It is. And what does Catherine de' Medici's enduring contradictory legacy tell us about the very nature of power, ambition, and maybe just survival in any age?